Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the virtual webinar titled Designing Teacher Practicum, where we will explore the effective practicum practices that brings about the meaningful field experience for pre-service teachers, learning from the Singapore National Institute of Education's model. So a very special greetings to our esteemed guests and speakers. We have Bapak Dr. Praptono, who is the Director of P3 GTK Ministry of Education, Ibu Elvira, who is the coordinator for Teacher Professional Education Program at the Ministry of Education. Selamat pagi Pak Praptono, selamat pagi Ibu Elvira.
Selamat pagi Bu Murni.
Iya, semoga semangat pagi ini. And then we have Bapak Mustafa Fahmi, who is the representative from the Ministry of Religious Affairs. I hope he is currently with us now. Bapak?
Not yet.
Yeah. Okay, and then of course we have our distinguished speakers. We have Dr. Liu Wenjia, who is the Associate Professor at the National Institute of Education in Singapore. Good morning, Dr. Liu.
Selamat pagi. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, very happy to have you today with us. And then we have Professor Anita Lee, who is our Tanato Foundation's friend and also professor at Unika Widya Mandala, Surabaya. Pagi, Prof.
Selamat pagi, Ibu Bapak semuanya. Good morning.
Semangat. Yeah. And then we also have Prof. Muklas from UNESA. Halo. Menyapa dari Jakarta. And of course, we have deans and representatives from partner universities, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, UIN Wali Songo, FKIP Universitas Riau, UIN Suska, Universitas Jambi, UIN STS, FKIP UMSU, Universitas Melawarman, and IAIN Samarinda. And of course, last but not least, all the audience, the lecturers and teachers education program coordinators from many teacher colleges in Indonesia. So right now we have like around 229 participants, 230 participants, and hopefully more will be joining us later. So this webinar is made possible with the collaborations between Tanato Foundation and the Ministry of Education and Culture as part of the initiatives to strengthen the teacher professional education programs, or in Indonesia we call that as a PPG program. Okay, so of course, today with me, Murni Leo, who is from Tanato Foundation, for the next 2 hours, we will go through the following agenda. We will start with the opening remarks from Ibu Margareta Ari Widawati as the Director of Basic Education Program at Tanato Foundation, followed by a few words from Bapak Praptono from the Ministry of Education. And then we will spend 1 hour learning from Professor Liu from the National Institute of Education. And then, of course, we will have some learning as well from Professor Anita Lee. And then there will be a closing remarks. And hopefully we will end in time by 12 p.m. Okay, so that we'll have everyone will have a good lunch, right? Selamat pagi, Ibu Ari.
Pagi.
Yes, I'll pass it to you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Murni. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning again. The Honorable Bapak Dr. Praptono, Director of Teacher Professions Education and Development at Ministry of Education and Culture Republik
GTK dari Kementerian Pendidikan Republik Indonesia.
The Honorable Bapak Mustafa Fahmi from Ministry of Religious Affairs, the Honorable Professor Liu Wenjia from National Institute of Education Singapore, the Honorable Professor Muklas Samani from UNESA, who is also served as our advisor for Teachers Training Institute program at Tanato Foundations, the Honorable Professor Anita Lee from University of Vidya Mandala, who is also Tanato Foundation advisor for the overall program, the Honorable University leaders that are attending this webinar, and all of distinguished guests in this webinar. First of all, let us praise and thank to God for His abundance of blessings, so we can meet, though virtually, in this webinar to share experience and thought in improving teachers' profession educations. It is an honor for me to stand here and represent Tanoto Foundations to welcome all of you. Tanoto Foundation is a philanthropy organization founded by Indonesian businessman, Mr. Sukanto Tanoto and his wife, Mrs. Tinah Bingi Tanoto. They believe that quality education accelerates equal opportunity. This belief comes from their own experience in developing business. Both of them did not finish their formal educations. Mr. Sukanto himself, even he did not finish his high school, but he can develop this RGE business group around the world. So, Bapak Ibu sekalian, as presented in our video profile, in Tanoto Foundations, we harness the transformative power of education to realize people's full potential and to improve lives. Our program support human capital development at every stage of people's life, develop full cycle of learners from early childhood, basic educations, to leadership development. In any of our program, Tanoto Foundations always act as the partner of the government. So I would say that Tanoto Foundation is supporter of government program in educations in specific. For basic educations, we position ourselves as partner for Ministry of Education and Culture and Ministry of Religious Affairs. So thank you Pak Praptono and Pak Mustafa for all support given to us endlessly. Ladies and gentlemen, under Basic Education Development Program, we launched Pintar program in 2018 and currently work in 5 provinces, Riau, Jambi, Sumatera Utara, Kalimantan Timur, and Jawa Tengah. Currently, we work with 25 districts and cities and 13 teachers training institute to find good practices in teaching, learning, and school leadership, as well as school management. So actually, Tanoto Foundation is not the one who create the good practices, but we are acting as the facilitator to collect what are good in the ground and then amplify them so the good practices can be accessed by as many as possible practitioners in educations. Go back about Pintar programs. Pintar program itself stands for promoting improvement to innovate, teach, and reach. It is aimed to improve the quality.
Jadi dirancang untuk meningkatkan mutu
in Indonesia in a sustainable manner. Our target is to improve the student performance, in particular in literacy and numeracy, which is it is in line with the government roadmap and also the SDGs goals that is become the target of Indonesia. So we are really working together with many partners to make this happen, to help the teachers facilitating the students having a better skills in numeracy and literacy, which is the foundation skills of the human being. In our program, we work in 3 pillars of interventions. First, teachers and principal professional development. In this case, we train them to implement good practices in teaching, leadership, and school management. The second pillar, we work with the Teachers Training Institute to improve quality of teachers' educations, to be more best practices oriented. This is actually dragged down from our experience in working with the schools in the district. So we hope that our lesson learned can be also be enjoyed by Teacher Training Institute in the process of teacher educations to create the future teachers for our schools. The third pillar is we work with the government, local government in the districts, because the primary and secondary school is under the control of the local government. So we work with the government to improve the capacity of the education office in each district where we are working and scale all the good practices that is found in the districts. So, ladies and gentlemen, today's webinar is part of our contributions in Teachers Training Institute development, which is now what we believe become one of the priorities at our Ministry of Education and Culture, and of course at the Ministry of Religious Affairs. We expect that through this webinar, the participants who are the leaders of Teachers Training Institute, lecturers, and mentor teachers can get reference about teaching profession education exercise in developed country like Singapore. Then subsequently, all participants can get the ideas for improvement when get back to campus. I believe keynote speech from Pak Praptono will help us to give a context why teachers' profession education is key for a sustainable improvement of education quality. And I also believe that the presence of Professor Liu and Prof. Anita will certainly help us understanding various models of teachers' educations, in particular the model to optimize the teaching practicum for teachers, for teacher students. So I think I have to stop speaking now. Thanks to all speakers who have taken the time to support this event. For all university leaders, lecturers, teachers, and all stakeholders who attend this webinar, please enjoy the learning and sharing. It is always a pleasure that Tanoto Foundations can support all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Ari, for the warm welcome and also set the notes on the importance of this webinar and what is the goal that we are trying to achieve today. And of course, we will now invite Pak Praptono, Dr. Praptono, who is the Director of P3GTK at the Ministry of Education, to convey his remarks. Silakan, Pak Praptono. Ya,
Baik, terima kasih Bu Murni. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
I would like to speak in bahasa. Terima kasih Bu Murni. Yang saya hormati Ibu Margareta Ari Widowati dari Head of Basic Education Tanoto Foundation, the Honorable Professor Liu Wunchia, and also Profesor Anita Lee, Prof. Muklas Samani, yang senantiasa membersamai Kementerian Pendidikan dan Kebudayaan dalam rangka untuk kita sama-sama berupaya untuk meningkatkan kompetensi para guru, khususnya melalui pendidikan profesi guru. Juga yang saya hormati mitra kami, Bapak Mustafa Fahmi dari Kementerian Agama, para dosen, para dekan, dan Bapak Ibu sekalian, terima kasih untuk yang kesekian kalinya Tanoto Foundation selalu mengambil peran menjadi bagian penting dari upaya Kementerian Pendidikan dan Kebudayaan Republik Indonesia untuk memajukan pendidikan yang kita cintai ini, dan secara spesifik banyak melakukan program-program yang terkait dengan peningkatan kompetensi dan profesionalisme dari para guru. Tidak hanya di LPTK kita, tetapi Tanoto Foundation juga terjun langsung ke sekolah-sekolah yang ada di pedesaan, termasuk saya beberapa tahun yang lalu juga mendampingi program Tanoto Foundation untuk the improving of the teacher quality in Sukabumi and Bogor. Tentu ini menjadi satu hal yang sangat bagus, di mana ketika Kementerian Pendidikan dan Kebudayaan mengedepankan pola kemitraan dan kegotong royongan, sehingga seluruh potensi yang dimiliki baik oleh civil society organization maupun non-government organization, baik di tingkat nasional, apalagi di tingkat internasional, ini akan bisa diberdayakan, akan bisa didorong untuk semakin berkontribusi dalam rangka kita untuk mempercepat proses pemajuan pendidikan kita. Pagi hari ini menjadi satu hal yang sangat baik, di mana kita, para praktisi pendidikan yang ada di Indonesia, untuk bisa bersama-sama sharing knowledge, sharing experience dengan narasumber kita yang sungguh sangat luar biasa dengan Profesor Liu dan juga Prof. Anitali. Mudah-mudahan akan banyak manfaat yang kita ambil dari diskusi-diskusi kita yang akan kita lakukan di session pagi hari ini. Tentu saya terus berharap dan mendorong agar kerjasama yang baik ini bisa terus dikembangkan, dan khususnya kepada Tanuto Foundation yang banyak memberikan perhatian untuk peningkatan kemampuan profesionalisme para guru kita, khususnya yang guru-guru kita yang mengajar di daerah-daerah marginal. Ini juga menjadi bagian penting dari program ini. Kalau selama ini Tanuto Foundation masih program-programnya ada di Sumatera, di Jawa, maka wilayah-wilayah timur, khususnya di daerah Sulawesi, Nusa Tenggara, Papua, Papua Barat, dan Maluku adalah daerah-daerah yang saya kira ini akan menjadi daerah yang sangat baik untuk kita berikan intervensi program, melakukan hal-hal yang bersifat afirmatif program, sehingga kemudian ketertinggalan kualitas pendidikan yang ada di daerah-daerah tersebut bisa kita pacu dengan lebih cepat lagi, sehingga kemudian pemerataan pendidikan dari aspek akses maupun mutu akan bisa segera kita realisasikan dengan semangat untuk kita menjalankan Merdeka Belajar. Saya kira itu poin singkat yang bisa kami sampaikan. Sekali lagi terima kasih atas nama Direktorat Jenderal Guru dan Tenaga Kependidikan. Kami menyampaikan apresiasi dan thank you so much to Tanuto Foundation yang selama ini terus menjadi bagian penting dari program-program nasional kita. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Bu Murni.
Ya, terima kasih Pak atas kembali penekanan kembali betapa pentingnya mungkin kolaborasi antar berbagai pihak ya, bukan cuma Tanuto Foundation dan kementerian, tapi juga universitas-universitas penghasil guru yang ada di seluruh Indonesia. Dan kami catat juga beberapa rekomendasi Bapak kalau kita harus ke timur. Memang selama ini mainnya sangat di barat atau di tengah. Terima kasih Pak Praptono. Mungkin kita bisa lanjut ya ke sesi berikutnya. Saya akan ganti bahasa lagi ke bahasa Inggris. So again, we subsequently we come to the main program, but before that, let me remind the new joiner. Right now, we have 300 people in the room, so that the language interpretation service is available for this webinar. So feel free to use it by clicking the globe icon at the bottom or at the Zoom panel. And then for the next one as well, what is very important is the chat feature. So during the presentations, please type any questions that you have on the chat box. Our team will read and sort the questions to be responded at the later part at the Q&A sessions. Yes, so please type your questions on the chat box. All right, so so in this webinar, we invite Associate Professor Liu Wenxia, who has myriad tons of experience curating field experience for teachers in Singapore. She was previously the Associate Dean for Practicum and School Partnerships at the National Institute of Education, and also the co-founders of the Motivations in Educational Research Laboratory at the Institute. So yeah, Dr. Liu, thank you so much for sparing time to be with us today to share your expertise. So I'll just pass the floor to you. And then,
Selamat pagi.
Yes. Hello.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation. Okay, let me share my screen and I will share some thoughts with you about
Lalu saya akan berbagi beberapa.
I was Associate Dean for Practicum, but I'm also the immediate past Dean. So what I am sharing, I think some of you probably know
Saya bagikan mungkin beberapa di antara Bapak Ibu sekalian.
teachers. So we prepare all the 33,000 teachers in Singapore. We also prepare the principals. Okay, so because of the time constraint, I will just go straight in. I think for the people here, we are all in agreement that practicum is very important. We send our students out to school because we want them to have a chance to experience what it means to teach. More importantly, we also believe that the practicum experience is actually critical for their growth and development as teachers. I think what we do know is that there are challenges in practicum, and these challenges are probably common throughout the world. It really depends a lot on how we see the roles of teachers. In Singapore, we believe that we want our teachers to be thinking teachers. So we don't just want them to practice, we want them to be able to think about their practice and also to talk about the practice. So this is just a very basic overview, but I think this sets the stage for what we are doing in Singapore. Okay, in our case, we have very strong partnership between our Ministry of Education, National Institute of Education, as well as schools. And we believe that this strong partnership is a key success factor in us being able to prepare our teachers well. To share about our thoughts, I think it's best summarized by our 5 tenets. Okay, so these are the 5 tenets. The first is that practicum has to be an integrated part of a coherent program. Second tenet is that we need to make sure that there is purposeful mentoring. Third is to provide our student teachers with graduated responsibilities and opportunities for practice during practicum. Fourth, practicum has to be assessed holistically, which will involve knowledge, skills, as well as beliefs. And lastly, to develop thinking teacher, practice alone is not enough. We need to have mechanism for them to think about their practice and to learn from their practice. Okay, so these are the 5 tenets which I will elaborate on in the next half an hour. What I'm going to show you next is sort of a diagrammatic representation of our model. Okay, so the first thing I want to highlight is to be able to have a good practicum program, I think it is important for us to ask ourselves, what is the type of teacher we are preparing? So in Singapore, we start off with this vision that we want to prepare teachers who are autonomous and who are able to think. So that is important. We don't see teachers as just a technician. We want teachers to be thinking and reflecting.
Itu sebagai orang-orang yang berpikir.
Of university-based teacher education is that the courses are very fragmented. Now you go from one course to another, whether it's education course, content courses, pedagogical courses. So you do different courses and then you go to school. Miraculously, we expect our student teachers to know how to tap on the information and the knowledge they learn and apply it in school. So the criticism has always been that whatever they learn in the universities are very theoretical. What they need in schools is very practical. And somehow there's this theory practice gap, which makes it not that simple for the student teachers to know how to apply. So we don't want this to be left to chance. We don't want the students just to go through the courses and suddenly go to school and think that they can apply. So what we wanted to do was to make sure that practicum is actually the spine when we design our program, which means that every time they do a course, or every course that we put into teacher education program, we have to ask ourselves, how does it help the students become a thinking teacher? And every time when we do a course, we also ask the students to ask themselves, how does that course help me to be the teacher I want to be? So it becomes the spine. And when we design the program, we make sure that there's opportunity for the students to learn for teaching. That means the course, when they are doing the coursework, they think about how they apply it in classroom. And we also make sure that when they go to the classroom, they think about where are the theories that they can draw from to help them understand what is happening. So this is one very key pillar. So practicum is the spine of our teacher education program in Singapore. Okay, and to make sure that the students have a chance to pull together their learning, we have a platform, we call it the portfolio, where the students will document what they do. So this becomes the glue of the program. I will elaborate a little bit more about this. And throughout the 1.5 years they are with us for the PGDE, or the 4 years they are with us for the degree program, we make sure that the students have a chance to reflect Every time they do a course, they reflect on how it makes them a better teacher, or what is the information they will pull from the course to go for their practice. And when they go to school, it is important to make sure that purposeful mentoring takes place. So they are not left to sink or swim. They are mentored in what they're supposed to do. And we build in certain platform as well as practices to allow the students to be mentored. So this is really a theoretical framework, and this covers the 5 tenets that I will talk about. So if I may, I will elaborate on the 5 tenets. Okay, the first tenet really is that practicum is part of a coherent and integrated program. So the important thing, I think, for all teacher preparation program is to make sure there is coherence and integration. Practicum involves different stakeholders. You need teachers in schools to be mentors. You need to work with the ministry. The teacher education institutes cannot develop teachers that the schools don't want. So whoever we are developing, there must be communication. We also need the teachers in the schools to know the vision that we have in terms of the teachers we are preparing. If we are preparing thinking teachers, the mentors in the school must provide the opportunity for our student teachers to talk and to reflect on their practice. So there has to be a shared vision. Okay, the second thing is there must be consistent philosophy. Okay, the shared vision is something that has to be communicated, shared among stakeholders, which would include the ministry, the universities, as well as the schools. The philosophy is, well, different universities have different philosophy. I will share with you the NIE's philosophy, but the philosophy really is our thinking behind what are the key competencies and values teachers would need. Okay, in our case, we have very intentional interweaving, meaning that we have coursework that we want them to do in the first year, we send it out. So for schools attachment in our degree program, 4 years program, they go out to schools 4 times. Every year they will go out. There are certain courses they will have to do before they go out to school. And during the time that they are in school, there are things that they have to collect, they have to observe to bring back to the university. So it's a very intentional interweaving. And the 4th part in terms of this integration is that we needed them to have a chance to make sense of their learning. Okay, so if I give example of what we have, this is our Singapore teaching practice. You can see this on the Ministry of Education website. This is developed by the NIE and the Ministry of Education, as well as our master teachers and our lead teachers. So what essentially here is that we have a shared understanding of the key knowledge bases that teachers need. So we believe that a good teacher needs to understand subject matters and goals, understand students and learning, and understand teaching. So these are knowledge bases. Right in the middle is pedagogical practice. There are things that we share in terms of the processes that is required of good teaching. And you find that these processes actually are in line with what we assess our student teachers during practicum. So this is a shared vision for the whole of our teaching profession in Singapore. We see teachers as professionals, meaning that we believe that they not only have expertise knowledge, they need to practice to make sure that they better their practice and to learn. We also want to make sure that they are given autonomy to make certain decisions. So this is our shared vision. And I believe that in different countries, they will have different type of shared vision. This is our underpinning philosophy. In NIE, we develop our teachers so that they have 3 different values paradigm. Okay, we want them to believe that all learners can learn. That's called a learner-centered values. We want them to have strong teacher identity. We also want them to see themselves as part of a profession and community. So these are the 3 values paradigm. There are skill set that we develop in our student teachers, and we share this together with our school mentors, because our school mentors will have to observe some of these and to give us feedback. Okay, knowledge is things that we mentioned just now, the knowledge bases. We also want our student teachers to understand themselves, their pupils, the community, as well as, of course, the pedagogy, curriculum, and global awareness. So this is underpinning philosophy in how we develop our teacher education program. Okay, I cannot emphasize how important it is that the schools know what we're trying to do. Because when the student teachers are in school, when you get them to talk about their practice, they have to draw on some of these values as well as knowledge that we deem are important in the university. Okay. I also mentioned just now that there's intentional interweaving. So what happened is that during the doing of the courses, when they go out for different practicum, we get the students to document. So they will collect artifacts from each of the course, they will do reflection, they will put in this thing that is called a portfolio. And we call this a learning and teaching portfolio. This portfolio follows the student teachers from pre-service education all the way to when they become full-fledged teacher in the school. So they will collect information, they will write about their teaching philosophy, and during practicum, they will do a sharing. Okay, this one I will mention again. They will do a sharing when they go to school to share with the school what they have learned in NIE, what is their teaching philosophy, and what they hope to learn when they are doing their practicum. And while they are doing the practicum, which is here highlighted in red, they will continue to collect artifacts. They will continue to document their learning, collecting maybe their lesson plans, their reflection, so that at the end of practicum, they can then do another sharing with the school, as well as back in NIE, where they share with their tutors what they have brought back from the practicum. Okay, this is important because if you don't talk about it, it is not part of their learning. They will just file it away and they don't make sense of it. So we believe that the talking is important because the more you talk about it, you are rationalizing and reflecting on your experience. Okay, so this is the first tenet. It is intentional in the design of the program as well as practicum. We don't put practicum just at the end of pre-service. Even for our PGDE, which is 1.5 years, they go out to school 2 times. The first time is after 6 months, they will go out for what is called teaching assistantship. So during the first stint, they will collect artifacts from the school, they talk to students, they talk to their mentor teachers, and when they come back to NIE to do the second half of their coursework, they actually would bring back what they have understood from schools into the university. So there is a very important interweaving from university to school, school back to university, and then back to school. So that's the interweaving, and that's tenet number 1. Okay, this is the one where I mentioned the portfolio. It allows them to integrate and aggregate. I think before we gave them a chance to share their learning, student teachers tend to go to school and they will just forget about all the theories they learned in the university. They think that theories is for the university, and when you go to school, you just practice. Okay, but we don't want that. We want them to draw on the theory to explain why they do certain things. The second tenet is purposeful mentoring. I have to say that good classroom teachers do not automatically make good mentors. Okay, mentors need to be developed. There are teachers who know how to teach, but they are not able to explain the decision behind what they do. Okay, so a good mentor must be someone who can make explicit their thinking. And also a good mentor must know that you should not tell the student teachers to do just what you do. Okay, there are different roles of mentors. And I think all teacher education institute have to ask yourself, what do you want your mentors to do? I will share a bit about what we want our mentors to do. But we should not take for granted that any good classroom teacher will become a good mentor. There's a need for preparation program, and they need to understand their roles. Their roles is not just to show, it's more than that. Okay, the second thing I want to say is that more practice doesn't always lead to growth. There is a misconception that, okay, the more time you spend in school, they will be better teachers. But if you are practicing the wrong thing, or you practice without improving, it may not make you a better teacher. So whatever limited time that they have in school, we have to make it count. There must be good mentoring. The students must know what to practice and how to practice. Okay, the third point I want to talk about purposeful mentoring is that the nature of support is important. So this really ties back to what type of teachers do you want, and what roles of mentors do you need them to play. Okay, in Singapore, it's a little bit complicated. I don't know whether you have the same system, but we have 3 different types of mentors. Okay, we have what is called cooperating teachers. These are the teachers where our students would shadow. They will work in their classroom. They take over part of their lesson. So these cooperating teachers work very closely with student teachers. Okay, then we have the next level, which is at a meta level, a higher level. The higher level is a school coordinating mentor. Generally, these are like the chief mentor. They will take care of all the student teachers and all the mentors, the CTs in a school. And they will conduct sharing session. They will facilitate sharing session for the student teachers so that they will learn from one another. That means the student teachers don't just learn from their own CT. They learn from their other student teachers. They also learn from the school coordinating mentors through what is called professional conversation. So this is at the school level. And from the university, we have a university supervisor who has the major responsibility for the student teacher, and they serve as the liaison. So they will liaison between the university and the school. They will go and visit the student teachers. They will have lesson observation. They give feedback. They listen to the students' reflection, and they will sit in on focused conversation. So we have these three groups of mentors. In terms of roles, in the world, mentors take on different roles. Okay, you have very common one like instructor of teaching. You have information source. Your mentor could be an introducer to the teaching world, or maybe a supporter. Okay, but the first three, they are more linked to apprenticeship model, where you want your mentee to learn from the mentor as instructor. It's important, but we don't think that it is enough. So we want to push our students to become thinking teachers. We don't want them just to be apprentices. Okay, and that's also the reason why we want our mentor to actually be a challenger, to question the students in terms of their reasons for doing certain things, their thinking, in terms of the application of theory. We want our mentors to be a co-inquirer in the classroom and also a co-learner in innovation. So these are newer roles. We are still working on it. It doesn't mean we are there yet. This actually has to happen during mentors preparation. So as we prepare our mentors, as we develop our student teachers, we are pushing the boundary so that they learn together. And I think that's important because I think sometimes the student teachers have things that they can teach the mentors, especially when it comes to things like technology and more innovative pedagogy, because they are still in NIE and they learn some of the newer advances in technology. Okay, so this is important in terms of thinking about mentor preparation, as well as how do we want our mentors to contribute in purposeful mentoring. Okay, the third tenet, there are two parts to this. There is a need for what is called graduated responsibility, meaning that you have to make sure that the students can cope with what is given to them. So they don't go in and plunge straight into teaching. They actually take on increasing responsibility, and the support from the CT will decrease. So they will go in and have 2 weeks of observation, for example. They take over part of the lesson. They may take small group for a period of time. Then they take over some of the periods before they take over a full control of the class. So that's called graduated responsibility. We find that important because the students need the time to observe, to reflect, and to learn. If they go straight in and have to prepare lessons for every single lesson, they don't have time to think. So the initial part is always a bit more hand-holding with the CTs, gradually giving them more autonomy in the classroom. So that is graduated responsibility. If we have, in our 4 years program, they go to school 4 times. The first year, they only do it as school experience. They don't teach. They talk to teachers, they observe. The second year, they do teaching assistantship. It means that they only help. They will observe for first 2 weeks, and then they do helping as small group helping or part of the lesson. In the third year, they do teaching practice 1. Okay, for teaching practice 1, they observe for 1 week, and then they slowly take over. The last time, the 4th year, they observe for 1 week, and then they take over for the rest of the term, because that's the time where they are already in school the 4th year, and that's the time where we want to give them opportunities for practice. So it has to be an extended period. So our final practicum is always 10 weeks. 10 weeks is 1 term in Singapore, and we want to make sure that there is enough chance for them to practice. Of course, you want them to practice because you want them to perfect. I mean, it's never going to be perfect, but they need to have a chance to learn from mistake and then try again. And this is important if they are to be aware of all the important skills. If the final practicum is too short, they may not have the chance to go through all the 4 processes in terms of planning and executing of lesson. So this is tenet 3. Tenet 4, okay, after all these practices, we think that it's important to understand that a thinking teacher is not someone who is just able to deliver micro skills. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that when you assess a person's teaching, it should not be a checklist of ticks that you are able to do A, B, C. It has to be more than that. So because of that, we want to make sure that our evaluation is holistic, meaning that there are multiple channels. We look at different things. So we looked at their lesson plans, the reason behind their decision. We looked at how they conduct and implement the lessons. We see how they actually give feedback to the students. We looked at their reflections. We get them to share during focused conversation. In terms of the final kind of evaluation, we evaluate them based on their knowledge and skills as what most people would do, but we also evaluate them based on their attitudes and not values, but attitude, professional attitudes. So in terms of our assessment, we looked at assessment in lesson observation. Okay, this is just the teaching itself. We want to make sure that we check their lesson preparation. So there are 4 processes. These are the 4. Lesson preparation, which includes their lesson plan, the thinking behind their lesson. Lesson enactment, how do they develop the lesson? How do they activate prior knowledge? What does it mean in terms of encouraging learner participation? How are they okay in terms of pacing, momentum? Are they clear in explaining? Do they do they think about using questionings, for example, to deepen learning? So these are all the different aspects of lesson enactment or lesson delivery. We also looked at whether they create a positive classroom culture. So we're not talking about just maybe encouraging them. We're talking about empowering learners. Whether our student teachers think about making sure that our students have a voice, whether students have a choice, whether the students feel respected. We want them to also make sure that they create a safe and inclusive environment. So this is the third process. And the fourth one is whether our student teachers are able to assess students' learning and to give appropriate feedback and assignment. So these are the 4 processes we would assess them on in terms of lesson observation. There is another part which I mentioned just now. Because of our teaching, because our NIE philosophy, we talk about values. That's also a reason why I mentioned just now that it's important to convey our philosophy to school. So the schools will help in giving us feedback on our students' 3 paradigms of values. We want to know whether our student teachers show care and concern for pupils, whether they encourage the pupils, whether they have high expectations. So this is learner-centered values. We said that we want our student teachers to have, or our teachers to have strong teacher identity. So again, we ask for feedback from the schools, from the supervisor about their professional integrity, the perseverance, the reflectiveness, and so on, and then service to schools. So this is actually part of the VQSK, the philosophy I mentioned. That's why the sharing is important. Because if the schools don't know what you're developing in the student teachers, they are not able to give you the feedback that you would need. Okay, so that's the 4th tenet. And the 5th tenet, if they just practice and they keep the lesson plan and they follow it up, what's going to happen is there is very minimal learning from practice. Okay, so if you want them to learn from practice, then we need them to think through what they did. In NIE, we use the reflective practice model. I think there are many different reflection models. So this is something that we use. Essentially, we want them to observe, to reflect, to plan, and to act. So it's more of, what happened. So after every lesson that they conduct, they're supposed to ask themselves these 4 sets of questions. What happened? Okay, what happened during my lesson? What did I expect? Why did it happen that way? How did I feel about it? What did I learn about it? So what does it tell me? Okay, what does it tell me about students' learning? What does it tell me about students' motivation? So what? And now what? What's the next step would I do? How do I change? How do I adapt? How do I innovate so that my students can learn better in the next lesson? So this is something our student teachers are trained to do for every single lesson that they conduct. In fact, this is something we encourage them to do for every course they take. So after they finish their EdPsych course, education psychology, we get them to reflect on the course and ask them, so what happened during the course? What did you learn? Okay, how does it help you become the teacher you want to be? Generalize the learning. What can I bring to my classroom? What's the decision that make me feel that maybe this certain theories is something that will help me be the teacher I want to be. So this is part of what we do all the time in our coursework. This is an example of what we do after a lesson, which I mentioned just now. And then we also get them to, okay, so this is reflective practice. We also have what is called focused conversation. So a reflection is something that they do on their own. They share with their mentors or supervisor. Professional conversation is where we have collaborative learning, where the group of student teachers come together. They are facilitated by the school coordinating mentors. So they do that at different weeks. So this is an example of what they do during a 10 weeks practicum. So during the first week, we have what is called Focus Conversation 1. That's the time where they will share, they will pull out the portfolio that I mentioned just now, that was the glue of our program, and they will tell the school what they have learned in NIE and how does it help influence them in terms of the teacher they want to be. So what we want is really for the teachers to see the student teachers as professionals. It's not a hello, I am Jane and I enjoy social media and things like that. It is not a social sharing. It's a professional sharing. Sharing in terms of my philosophy, what I believe in, what I've learned, what I hope to learn, and so on. So that's week 1. It sets the stage, it sets the expectation. Okay, then week 3 to 4, they started observing. They may do part of the lesson. That's the time where they are encouraged to bring up topics from their own classroom. So they will share with the SCM and other student teachers about some certain real issues that they encountered. And the SCM would bring them through the reflection model to ask them to talk about, okay, what are the evidence you picked up? What exactly happened? What do you expect to happen? Why do you think that happened? Now, what is your proposed solutions, or what do you want to attempt to do? And so on. So it is going through, we keep, well, maybe we are very naggy, but the thing is we keep on getting them to say, okay, how do you apply your theory? Which is the theory you can apply to try and see what can be resolved? And we also want them to answer the question as to what are the information, the artifacts, the data you can get from your classroom that helps you decide whether you have better the students' learning. So we think that having this research or inquiry mindset is important. You don't just ask the question. You need to know what would give you the answer. So they go through this twice, Focus Conversation 2 and 3, where they go through the discussion and they learn from it. They try certain things and they come back and they share what happened. And then during the end of practicum, week 9 to 10, they will do their final sharing in school. So they will share about what they have learned during the practicum, what happened during the couple of focus conversation, and they talk about which are the teaching competencies that they have developed. So this sort of round up the practicum learning, and they do the same sharing back in the university. So we have a big show and tell where they will invite their tutors to come to listen to their final sharing before their graduation. It's like a celebration. And what is important is actually for our university tutors to now hear from the student teachers how useful or what they've brought with them from the courses in the university to the school. Okay, and what are the things that they learn in the school that would be useful in understanding the courses in the university. So it becomes a two-way conversation. This will help enrich the tutors' understanding of the needs of the school. It will help enrich the students' understanding of what they did in the school. So I think that in a sense sort of summarize the 5 tenets. I just want to share that during this kind of sharing, generally what happens is that the student teachers normally end up, after 10 weeks of practicum, after teaching so many hundreds of periods, they will have a lot of things going on, but the talking at the end helps them to filter, okay? It helps them to filter off the things that are not so important compared to the things that eventually becomes the foundation of who they are. And it actually helps them become more anchored. They realize which are the things that are more important. They have a better understanding of their own teacher identity. So that in a nutshell is what we try to achieve in our practicum. That is actually the spine of our teacher education program. So thank you very much. And I am keen to answer the questions that you have for me, but this is the overview of what I was sharing just now. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, wow.
I hope I didn't go too fast, but there are just so many things that I want to say.
Yes, I know we learned a lot. Like it was like while you're sharing about like the experience that have in Singapore, and then I was just typing all the ideas on the chat. But really very interesting. If I can summarize some of them, right? It's really, I mean, there are a lot of points, but I think what caught my attention is definitely like how the design of the program is very intentional, and how the design is very holistic, and ensure that there's like equal partnership, also careful choice of content, and also approach. Secondly, what's also very important is that to have a clear ambitions, like what kind of teacher that you want to produce, right? In Singapore, for example, like you want a teacher that's like very independent, they can think for themselves, they are able to I don't know, find resources, and then create something out of that. And the third one is, of course, like a very robust measurement and also evaluation system, like how the systems can keep improving itself, but through a careful design, like everything is integrated and holistic. I think that those are like what caught my attentions from the sharing. But let me, I'm just going to start with one question. It's like, how is this whole practicum different, during the pandemic, right? Like, how does I mean, like we cannot, I'm just trying to say that this is like very important part, because like right now also all of us are experiencing pandemic situations, but things are improving in Singapore, but not in Indonesia. So, how does it change the whole teaching practicum? Yeah, maybe that's the first question.
Thank you for the question. Actually, you are right. Although Singapore is doing okay, but we're all learning from the experience, and we want to make sure that if something happened like that again, we are all prepared. Last year, Singapore, in fact, yesterday, okay, 7th of April was the day we declared that we have circuit breaker. So, we have to stop school. Everybody had to stay at home. We could only go out to get our essential. I think, can't believe that it's a year, but yes, it's exactly a year. Okay, so everything changed very suddenly. We had to immediately tell, because our student teachers were out on practicum. In fact, they were out for final practicum. So it was an issue. Before that time, we wanted to make sure that they at least had a chance to teach and was observed in teaching. So we had to make sure that was clear. And then what happened was, in Singapore, we went on to home-based learning. So it was all on Zoom. It was for a few weeks initially, it was tough because the students were not prepared. Some of them have no computer at home. Some of them have no network. So we couldn't do online teaching. And a lot of schools had to do offline. So you send emails, worksheets for the students, and try to keep things going for a while because it was our term time. So that was the situation. But what we did eventually learn was, after the initial part, I think the main thing for any country really is whether the students have access to technology. So we had a period of time where the schools had to try and loan out computers, because without all the devices, the students cannot go online. So loaning out of computers was important, making sure that the students have a chance to have network, because we have students who live in houses where there's no network. So when you have no internet, we can't get in touch with the students. So there was a period where it was very tough. But once the school are able to loan out the devices, and our voluntary organizations step in, and the students were able to get access to internet, we were able to conduct our lesson. Okay, now what happened is, because of what happened during the pandemic, it means that home-based learning becomes part of our design for all our schools. So every school has made it a point that in every term, there will be days where the students stay at home and have online lesson. And for student teachers, we also make sure that they all can conduct online lesson. So it becomes part of our training. Of course, last year we were not so fully prepared. So the students struggle a bit, the teachers, we all learn how to use Zoom. Before the pandemic, I've never used Zoom. Okay, so that's something we all learned. But with the experience, I think school has changed for us totally. In fact, in Singapore now, we started to make sure that every student has a device. The school can decide whether it's an iPad, ThinkPad, or a computer, but every student is now subsidized by the ministry to get a device so that they can learn, they can do home-based learning. And every term we would do it.
That's definitely a bit of a challenge for Indonesia.
Yeah, partly because it's also
Yeah.
so many islands and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's what we are doing in Singapore. So we make sure that home-based learning is part of our training.
Okay, so now in a way it changed that. In the past, like teachers only need to know how to do like a face-to-face classroom
Yeah.
setting, but now they have to learn how to conduct
Do
a
Zoom
class
lesson.
online. Okay, that's
In fact, in university as well. So for all our courses, every course we will have 2 lessons that we will do Zoom lessons for university courses.
that's really interesting, and it's gonna change like the way learning is going to be conducted in the future. Yeah.
I think working as well.
Yeah. Yes.
We now tend to work at home and work using Zoom more and more often.
Yes. There's one question from the floor. What is the challenge that is faced during the implementations? Not only the COVID, but I think teacher practicum, like coordinating between school and university, all of that. And what is the solutions taken?
Okay, I think what is very important is shared. Well, I wouldn't say that it has to be a shared role, but I think the school must feel that they are part of this. They have to have a shared commitment. So that is important. If the school feels that they are only doing the university a favor, and we don't get them fully on board, or some of them may not even want to be partner with university, then it's very difficult. But if the school feels that it is something that is worthwhile because you're developing teachers for the school, that they have a say, then it makes it easier. So for us, it is really spending time working with the schools. So we want to have sharing session. We also, so when we train the mentors, we let the school understand that actually it benefits the school, because when the teachers become better mentors, they actually are able to also help their own colleagues who are trained teachers. So mentoring doesn't mean you only train student teachers, you also help the beginning teachers. You don't let all of them struggle on their own. And as a school, the quality of teaching and learning will improve if the mentors are able to guide and help one another. So having this feeling that is all our shared responsibility. No, quality education can only come about when the school works together with the university. And that is the main challenge. So we spend a lot of time sharing our vision. We work and we train our mentors. We also make sure that we listen to the school, because sometimes universities are doing things, maybe they're more research focused, they may not do things that the school thinks are important. So it has to be a lot of trust, a lot of commitment on both sides. Actually, together with the Ministry of Education as well, in fact.
Yeah, I think that's why the strong partnership is something that's like very important. I want to actually invite Prof. Muklas here, who is like our friend, actually, the professor from University of Negeri Surabaya, to actually maybe ask questions. I think he has like a lot of questions. He's very enthusiastic. Maybe I'm gonna ask him to unmute. Prof. Muklas, you have questions, right? Please feel free to raise your questions. Hi, Prof.
Terima kasih, Mbak Murni. Thank you. Thanks, Prof. Leo, for your comprehensive presentations and inspiring to prepare Indonesian incoming teachers. I have actually 2 questions that, even though not directly related with practicum, but I'm sure it is part of our key new teachers. First is how Singapore encourage youngsters to be teachers. I'm sure that Singapore won the best graduate from high schools to be teachers there. The second is, when they want to be teachers, how NIE make sure that they have already master or understand the subject matter. As far as I know, in PGDE, in IE, there is no course about content. So how NIE make sure that they have already understand the subject but they want to teach? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, let me answer. Let me try and give you a short answer to your question, because it's a big question. Okay, I think what is important, the most important thing that I think Singapore did in terms of getting good students to join teaching is that we made sure that teaching is a choice profession. Okay, what I meant is that we want to make sure that we respect teachers, and it's a policy decision, in fact, that teachers should be respected. So in most of our, you will hear our Prime Minister thanking our teacher, you will hear our Minister of Education thanking our teachers. So it is seen as a respectable career. I think that is important. Okay, because if it's not a respectable career, then your straight A students don't want to consider teaching. It has to be respectable. The other thing is that there has to be a career trajectory. So in Singapore, we put in place career trajectory to make sure that good people are able to advance in the career. Okay. We also want to make sure that it is a meaningful career, meaning that the people feels that it's a calling, it's something they want to do because they want to contribute and to serve. So these are things that doesn't require a lot of money, but it is very important because it puts teaching on par with all your service, your professional career, like your medicine, your doctors, and so on. So it's seen as meaningful, it's seen as respectable. We don't do teacher bashing. In some Western country, for example, they do a lot of teacher bashing. And when you do teacher bashing, you lower the status of the profession. Okay, so that is the part where meaningfulness and respectfulness is important. The other thing I think Singapore government did was that we made sure that graduates who choose to join teaching do not lose out in terms of their career. So actually, every single student teachers that come into NIE, they are paid to undergo training. So the PGDE students actually are paid similar to maybe a starting engineer pay when they are in NIE.
Oh.
Yeah, so but that costs money. So of course, that's why I want to say just now that even without a lot of money, it means that as long as that you make sure that meaningful, it has to be tied with whether the teachers have a say. If they don't have a say at all, they just follow instructions all the time, then they don't think that it is something that is a professional. It becomes more like a practitioner. So there's the status of the profession. Okay, so I think giving teachers a salary entices people to think that it is something that is valued, but I don't think that is the only reason. So actually for Singapore, we made it difficult. There's a high bar to join teaching, Only 30% of the people actually who applied managed to get in. So some of them apply many times. And because it's difficult to get in, they see it as an honor and a privilege to join teaching. But if teaching is a job where people have no choice, they got nothing else they can do, then they join teaching, then it will be seen as a low status profession. So I think there are things there. I think what we should do is we start off by respecting teachers, valuing teachers, thanking them. Like our minister actually thanked the teachers for the COVID-19 situation because our teachers kept the school going. I mean, they were at risk, but they were still working from home. So it was something that is important. So that is how we try to entice teachers. I think getting a good pay, having a career trajectory. In Singapore, we have 3 teaching tracks. 3 tracks. I think maybe you are aware. We have the teaching track, we have also the specialist track and the leadership track. So our principal master teacher can have pay as high as a principal in school. That means we value good teaching. We don't just value good leadership. So that is how we entice people into the teaching profession. Sorry, what was your second question again?
As far as I know, that during
content,
there is no
content cost. Let me answer that question. Okay, so what happened is that we have our degree program that makes sure that we have the content that the teachers need. So they come and join us for 4 years. Okay, for our PGDE, what happened is that we work with the ministry and we set down what is called prerequisite. So if they're going to teach chemistry, they need to have certain major or minor in the university before they can come in to teach chemistry. Okay, and for some courses where they do not have prerequisite and we have a lack of teachers, we conduct content upgrading. So we accept them in the program. So it's actually just before, at the beginning of PGD, they have to attend extra courses. And the ministry will pay NIE to conduct the extra sort of bridging courses. Yes, that is.
Thank you so much.
That is on top of the PGD, because you have some students who may need a few courses, or maybe English grammar, for example, is something they seldom do in university. But when you become an English teacher, you need to know grammar. So it is something that we do in terms of content upgrading, and it is additional to the PGDE.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I hope I answer your question.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Yeah. Thank you, Pak. Thank you, Prof. One question from the floor is like how to change teacher to become learners with growth mindset. I think it aligns with the autonomous thinking teachers. Yeah. I don't know. I think you elaborate a lot on that, but for me, change is something that's very difficult, especially when it comes to mindset, right? And then values and beliefs, like what kind of challenges, or is content enough, or like how is it designed?
Okay, maybe because I'm also I do a lot of research on motivation and mindset. So in a sense, yeah, I do want to say something about this. Okay, it is not easy to change mindset, because mindset comes together with our upbringing, our socialization, and every one of us have certain ideas. If we have ever said, I can never do this, then to a certain extent, there is an aspect of ourselves that we have fixed mindset. I may think I can never sing, or I can never drive. So all of us will have different views on different things that we think we can never do. Because the moment I say I can never sing, it means I don't believe I can improve in my singing. So that is actually a fixed mindset, okay? I can't say that we can change the teachers, but I think it is very important that they are aware. So we always need to teach them. It is in our educational psychology, what is the growth mindset and fixed mindset. It is very important to let them know that human beings have different mindset, so that they are able to appreciate what is happening to their students. Because there are students who say, I can never learn maths, and I'm hopeless in maths, I hate numbers. So understanding is one thing, but I think for teachers it is very important for them to know that their belief of the student will limit the student's experience. If I think the students cannot learn, I will not go all out to find different ways to teach the student. So if I have a fixed mindset of students learning, my belief will limit my students' opportunity. I think minimally, teachers need to know that. And I always will tell the teachers that if you are teaching the gifted students, you won't do that much damage with fixed mindset, because you think that they are gifted anyway, and if you think that mindset, if their intelligence is born with, then obviously you won't destroy their future. But if you are teaching the lower progress learner, your belief in fixed mindset of your students will then detriment their opportunity in education. So that's all teacher educators can do. We have to bring awareness. We have to let them understand their beliefs can have impact, but I can't force them to change. Okay, I think the awareness is a starting point.
Okay, so start with the awareness, yeah.
They need to understand, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Bu Ari, Ibu Ari Widawati from Tanto Foundation has questions, right? Bu?
Yeah, thank you, Murni. In regard for the teaching practicum, now we are really working with the 4 universities in Indonesia to find out an innovations in strengthening the collaborations between teachers and lecturers in mentoring the student teachers when they are doing the teaching practicum. So, is there any kind of lesson learned, on how to strengthen the collaborations between teacher mentor, I mean the one that will mentor the the student teachers and the lecturers. Because sometimes what we try to address in our piloting program is the bridging the communications and the helping the preparations of collaboration. I mean, what the teachers should do, what the lecturers should do. So is there any kind of tips and strategy that we should do in preparing this lecture and student and the mentor, the lecturers to work together? Thank you.
Okay, sorry, can I just ask you also, just to know a bit more about Indonesia, do you all pay your mentors in school? Are the mentors paid to be mentors?
I think there's Pak Muklas,
yes,
there is a payment, yeah?
Amount. Yes,
okay.
a very small
Actually,
amount.
In Singapore, we don't pay our mentors.
Mm.
We don't pay our school mentors. Okay, and I just want to know a bit about the situation in Indonesia. So if you ask, how do we strengthen the communication? I think what happened has to be that the mentors in school, somehow must feel that the experience is useful for them. That means they don't do it just because they are paid. They don't do it just because the university asks them. Because if they are not taking the roles of mentors seriously, they wouldn't be able to give their best to the student teachers. Okay, so what we do is when we are preparing our mentors, we also want the mentors to feel that the mentoring process helps them in their own growth. So they will see the training as also not only just helping the student teachers, but it's helping them. That's why we also do co-inquirer and co-learning. So it becomes a two-way learning. So in the process of mentoring, they grow. Then they will find that it's something that is meaningful and they want to do. Okay, I think on the part of the university lecturer, okay, because I am a trained teacher. I taught in school. Okay, and I know that sometimes the demands and challenges of the schools are different from what the universities are worried about. So if there isn't enough communication, the schools will think that the universities are doing things that are not important for the schools. Okay, so you may have universities who are focusing on certain things, whether maybe it's philosophy of education or something else, and the schools are not on board. When they are not on board, they will not help in the mentoring because they are not going to talk to your student teachers on some of the things that the university wants. So I think firstly, of course, the establishing of that vision, the common understanding of, what type of teachers are we preparing, the schools have to feel that, yeah, these are the teachers we want, and these are the teachers who would value add to our school if they join our school. And then the mentors feel that, hey, in mentoring, I would learn a bit more. I didn't do all this reflective practice last time. Now I know what is this model like. Or as a co-inquirer, I will learn from my student teachers as well, how to ask the question, where to get the information. Because a lot of teachers have left teacher preparation years ago. They're experienced teachers. So we want them to feel refreshed when they work with our student teachers. We want them to think that not only are they doing something meaningful and contributing, but they are also learning. So I think if you're asking for tips, it's a very simple way to say something that's very complicated. But yeah, communication, sharing, understanding each other, in fact, working together. If there's a chance for the university, in our case, our university tutors and lecturers sometimes get attached to school. So they even may take over certain lessons and conduct master classes as a demonstration. So the closer you work with the school, the easier it is. For us, it's tough because we have 360 schools. We are working with 360 schools. Yeah, they are all our lab schools in a sense.
Prof. Liu, is there any specific system that is applied by the universities to ensure that there is a good communications between the lecturers and the teachers? How is the system?
Okay, every year we have a conference. Okay, we have learning conference. Learning conference is once every 3 years, where the school mentors and the university tutors, they will share research findings on mentoring and practicum. So that is a professional setting where there is sharing between our school teachers, our mentors from school, and our university professor. So that is called Learning Forum. Every year we have what is called the SCM briefing, where we meet the coordinator from each school. Okay, so there are updates on the program of the university. So let's say if I have changes to my university program, we tell the school coordinating mentors so they know what to expect. And we explain to them why we add this course, what are the courses we added, you know, and how does it help to be the teachers become better teachers. So this is a yearly platform. We conduct what is called a CT training workshop, mentor preparation workshop. So all the CTs would come and they will spend, I think they do a 2 AU course, which is 24 hours, where we will then share things like our university preparation program, the vision, and philosophy, what you're trying to do. This all helps them to understand what we're trying to do. And also in the preparation course, we teach them about mentoring skills, you know, the reflective practice, how to facilitate this discussion, as well as lesson observation. So what we do is we do what is called a calibration. You know, what is good teaching? What you think is good teaching may not be good teaching to everybody. So they will all watch a video, then they will talk about what they pick up from the video, and they calibrate. So in a sense, this is one way in which we make sure that there is a common understanding. I mean, there are quite a lot of different things we do, but these are the main things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. For the interest of time, I'm going to invite Prof. Anita to ask the last question, and she also has questions, and then she will continue with the presentation, I think.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Hi, Prof. Anita. No, I think we're doing very well.
Thank you, Yes, Professor Liu, I'm really appreciative of your presentation. There's a lot to learn from the Singapore system, and so it's wonderful, and you presented that very clearly. Okay, so well, I have a lot of questions, like detailed questions, you know, like mentor teacher ratio, student teacher ratio, and just a lot of other details and technicalities. But let me just give you maybe an overall question. Like, you know, I believe that for any program or subset of any program to be successful, it needs the support of the whole ecosystem. So in your views, what are the key success factors that the STP is getting from the education ecosystem in Singapore? Like, I mean, you mentioned one about student teachers at NIE are getting salaries already. And so that's one. Any other, like you also mentioned about the respect and honor of teachers. Any other factors from the whole education ecosystem that makes your program supported and successful?
Okay, Prof. Anita, I think there's no simple answer to that. But I think in Singapore, okay, partly because we are very small and because we are the only National Institute of Education, maybe things work a bit easier for us, but it is intentional work. I think there are three very important parties in education. It will be your teacher education providers, which will be the universities, the ministry, and of course the school. So in our case, we have not, okay, I talked a lot about our communication with school. But I think the communication with the ministry is very important. So our senior leaders, you know, our director of NIE, our deans of teacher education would meet the ministry people, Ministry of Education people very often in terms of sharing of ideas, in terms of, for example, if there is going to be a change in policy in education, most of the time, the NIE senior management will be involved to give input. So there are things that we do that we'll share with the ministry before they make certain policy decisions. And I think ministry in Singapore, we have national curriculum. So our national curriculum is, the oversight is by the Ministry of Education. But the Ministry of Education will invite experts from the university to contribute and to be involved in discussion. This is important because you don't want a de-link between what the ministry is trying to implement, what the university is teaching, and what the school needs. So it is really a tripartite relationship. So if there is going to be any changes from the ministry policies or curriculum, it will be great if apart from the schools, the universities are involved in the discussion and conversation so that we are not caught off guard. So for example, if the ministry is going to come up with a new science curriculum, it doesn't make sense that the universities do not know and are the last to know, because we need to prepare the teachers to implement the curriculum in the school. So if you're asking about ecosystem, I think these are the three things. And of course, there are different things that that would be important. So for example, in Singapore, we talk about desired outcome of education. So the ministry will set this desired outcome of education for our students, that we want them to be concerned citizen and confident learners and so on. So again, if this is what you want in the students, when you are coming up with the framework, the universities need to know, because we are preparing the teachers to develop and our students in that mold that the nation wants. Okay, so that is where the communication comes in. Communication between the ministry and the university, communication between the universities and the school. I think it is important that for us, we are very mindful of our role. The universities need to champion certain things. You need to champion professional knowledge, professional standards. We cannot do things without asking questions. Okay, because that's our role as a university. But we also cannot do things with no consideration of the challenges and the needs on the ground. Because a lot of universities are going for things like ranking and research and citation. But these are things that we have to remember. Yes, they are nice to have, but they are not our core job. Okay, our job really is to prepare teachers so that our students benefit, and that actually determines the future of our country. I think in our case, it's very, very obvious. If we do a bad job, there is only one place to blame, because all the Singapore students are taught by teachers that we develop.
That's really very interesting to talk about, like the role of the university as the connector between the policy and also implementation on the ground. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to pass the floor to Prof. Anita for your part. Thank you, Prof. Liu. I think we will invite you for closing remark later on. But now for Prof. Anita, today we have Prof. Anita, who is the Professor of Education at Unika Vidya Mandala. And recently she has been working supporting the Ministry of Education in revitalization of PPP program projects. So maybe definitely she can share a lot about the teacher education in Indonesia. Silakan, Prof.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Murni. Again, I really enjoyed Dr. Liu's presentation. It was really enlightening, informative and enlightening. Okay, so Murni has mentioned this is where I work, and so it'll be clear also when we talk about, we also have a tripartite model of partnership, and I believe all the paradigms and the 5 tenets that Dr. Liu has shared were really good. And so if I can simplify in this model, then pedagogy or teacher education is all about learning principles and teaching practices. And so the Singapore Teaching Practicum with the 5 tenets is it's the one agenda at NIE to bring these two together. And so we do have exactly kind of the same model of the tripartite partnership with the NIE. So you have the MOE and NIE and the schools, but the teacher education institutes. So I would like to emphasize institutes. Perhaps Pak Muklas later can inform us just how many teacher education institutes. I think we've got regular meetings also with Pak Praptono, and I forget the number of the teacher education institutes all over the country. And so yes, we do have this also, but okay, and also the teacher professionalism. Yes, we also have the drives, or the what is it? The demands that we should cultivate teacher or professional teachers with all these competencies and the skills and values also, of course. Okay, and so this is the journey of a professional teacher here in Indonesia. We do have people from the Teacher Education Institutes here, so correct me if I'm wrong. Here at this point at the Teacher Education Institute, LPTK, yes, the learning principles and the teaching practices are incorporated into it's the so-called PLP in our university, perhaps in others also, I'm sure, PLP1 and PLP2, yeah. And so that constitutes the pre-service stage of the journey of the professional teacher, you know, student teacher. And then it comes the PPG, Prajab and Daljab, yeah, teacher professional education, or PPG or PPG. I just attended the penyegaran briefing this week, and so they're modifying the system, the regulation. So, but starting last year, because it was pandemic, and so it was done 100% online, so teachers had to do it in their own school because of the expediency of the pandemic. But in 2019, teachers were placed in different schools other than their own schools. But this year, it's going to be in the teacher's own school, but perhaps not because of the expediency of the pandemic, but I'm trying to comprehend the reasoning so that teachers are based in their own schools and they can develop the real action plans for improving their own teaching practices as well as their schools. And then, okay, and so the practicum, so again, we have PLP1 and PLP2 at the Teacher Education Institute, or LPTK, and then at the PPG. And I got this from the first two from our own buku panduan of PLP1 and PLP2, and then the PPL from the PPG, and those are the objectives as well as the activities. And then this is a summary. Ibu Tri Lestari helped me with this. Thank you, Ibu Tri. Ibu Tari. So Ibu Tari, by the way, is a scholar working in UNESA, Pak Muklas. I'd like to introduce that. Ibu Tari is our new docent at Widya Mandala, now working on her S3 at UNESA. Okay, our PLP1 is semester 3 or 4, but the idea is just for student teachers to observe, you know, to observe the school culture, school climate, the code of conduct, the routines, and the teaching and learning activities, including the extracurricular activities, and then observing the best practices, and they make a report. But in PLP2, they eventually get to teach the class. But before then, they do class observation, also class housekeeping and administration, and then teaching practices and other duties. And they're supervised by teacher education supervisor, and we call them also guru pamong. So dosen pembimbing and guru pamong. Guru pamong then could be mentor teachers or partner teachers. Yeah. And this next is the PPL in our PPG. Oh, sorry. So this is new, starting this year. So before it was 4 credits, yes. Before it was 26 days, now 31 days in the participating teachers school. And then requirements, completion of the materials, enrichment, 5 credits, and then perangkat pembelajaran, 3 credits, and then ujian lisan, ujian comprehensive. Yeah. And then main activities, class preparation, discussion with the dosen pembimbing and guru pamong, and then teaching practices, and then recording. They have to make video recordings of. For me, as a dosen pembimbing, this is also an area that I have been learning myself. You know, I hate making and editing videos, but I learned from the teacher participants how to do that. Video editing. I thought, you know, before I thought it was just too millennial for somebody my age to learn that, you know. I don't like to do TikTok kind of things, but hey, I learned that TikTok can also be a media that teachers have been using too. And so for me, there's a new learning area. And so reflection and discussion. And then what I like with this new scheme is that the reasoning or the rationale that then teachers get to write the action plan for improvement when they do that in their own schools, compared to in 2019, they're assigned in other schools. Okay. You know, of course, there are pluses and minuses. When they're assigned in other schools, then there's a lot of meeting of minds, meeting of ideas, a lot of enriching, just fresh ideas from other schools. But last year it was just because of expediency, because of the pandemic, then they were doing the teaching practice in their own schools. But this year, even though there are big chances that schools will open up again, that they would still do it in their own school. But not because of the expediency, but because of the rationale that their teaching practices are grounded in their own schools. But again, this is in PPG, not in PLP, not in the teacher education institutes, or the TTI, as you call it. And so this, I took it from Kemdikbud, the timeline. So after the Uji Comprehensive. Okay, now in a nutshell, what can we learn from the STP? Okay, I thought this is what you know, I have been you know, studying your PPT, Dr. Liu, and then as I was listening to you and also listening to your responses to the questions, then I thought, okay, I thought these are what we can learn from the STP. First, you have a very strict selection at the point of entry. As you said it yourself, it's easier to conduct because there's only one, the NIE. And so there's an awareness that you are really at a high stake to maintain your quality. Well, we here have so many, maybe hundreds of teacher training or teacher education institutes, LPTK.
1,500.
How many, Pak Lumuklas?
1,500 something.
Right. Okay. Yes. You often mention that, Pak Muklas, in our FGD with the PTK. Yeah. So 1,500. So it's, of course, it's really hard to maintain, but to enforce, you know, the strict selection. I remember Pak Syawal Kultom had the idea that, okay, you know, it's when it's hard to enforce it in all those 1,500 teacher education institutes, then perhaps we can have one set of exam or selection at the entry level. They can enter the universities or the teacher training institutes, but they have to be screened with one set of selection method or instrument so that they can go on or not. Okay, and so that's one we can learn from you, which might not be easy to implement here, but we can modify that perhaps. And second is the continuous improvement of the teaching practicum. Hence, also here, the overall teacher quality in Indonesia. And also the teacher training or teacher education institutes. And we have to say that, you know, out of those 1,500 teacher education institutes, there's really a big spectrum of quality. We do have the quality standards, you know, by the accreditation council, and also, you know, a lot of regulations about standard nasional, pendidikan tinggi, but then enforcing that is a different matter. Okay. And so autonomous lifelong learning teachers, you have the autonomous thinking teachers, and I like that. But here we have the Gerakan Merdeka Belajar. And so I'm trying to Englishise that into autonomous lifelong learning teachers and autonomous reflective teachers with the repertoire of teaching learning strategies grounded in sound education philosophies. Yes, I'm with you. I'm on the same page that we don't want teachers to be technicians who are just doing all the picking up teaching techniques and methods out of the repertoire, but they have to to be thinking about, okay, why should I pick this teaching technique or strategy compared to others? How does that reflect my philosophy of education? How does that meet the needs of my learners? And so they have to be thinking. While we still have a lot of homework to do. Sometimes teachers may just take out of the repertoire or the techniques that are taught to them without like the philosophical grounding or even the theoretical grounding. And then community of practice, we do have MGMP, KKG here. That has to be more more improved and enhanced. I go to Singapore quite a lot for academic enhancement in my field. I was teaching at CIMEO RLC at one time as a guest teacher, Dr. Liu, and my students then were teachers from the schools in Singapore, and also when I go to conferences in Singapore, oftentimes during lunchtime I sit with teachers, and so they get, they were telling me that, oh, we've got vouchers. Is that right, or is it still valid now? We've got vouchers that we need to participate in conferences as part of the professional development, and so that thing is something that is good in your system. And so it's a continuous professional development, not just organized by the NIE or the MOE, but also perhaps like conferences organized by CIMEO or by RELC, or conferences that are acknowledged to be okay for teachers. Okay, and then the streamlining career tracks of educators that we still have to do, because sometimes again, okay, like the next point also, my question, support of the ecosystem to the teaching profession. When you said that student teachers are paid already when they're still student teachers, I guess a lot of the audience would, wow, okay. But then, I sent a private message to Pak Muklas. We have 4 million teachers in Indonesia, and I check your population in Singapore is 6 million. And so how will we get the money for the 4 million teachers? Just the 4 million teachers plus the student teachers that are still in the teacher education institutes. And so, but I still list that the support, because again, support doesn't have to be all money. It can be respect and honor for teachers. And just recently, I was very proud of the decision of the Ministry of Health, that with the vaccination program, we do have the prioritized targets. First one is the elderly citizens, so that is good. Because they're the most vulnerable among the citizens. So the first one is the elderly. The second batch is teachers, okay, university teachers and school teachers. Although perhaps in some areas, teachers are, they have to compete also with the other petugas layanan publik and celebrities, yeah. But okay, celebrities, maybe that's for campaigning. I'm not going to comment about that. But the petugas layanan publik, like shopkeepers, well, that's perhaps for urgent expediency. But the fact that teachers are put in the second stage, I'm really happy with that, and I take pride in that. I think that's a good gesture for teachers, that teachers are respected enough, in our society, even though we still have a lot of homework to boost up, the prestige of becoming teachers. Okay, and the last point, this is something that we have to work work on it on our own, because reduce gaps in progress opportunities and teacher quality across the nation. In Singapore, I know too, because I'm now working on an article with co-authors from Singapore, and we argued a lot also, because I argued that, oh, your nation is very homogeneous. He disagreed with me. No, we're not homogeneous. We are also heterogeneous. Okay, I can accept that, including what you shared, Dr. Liu, that some of the students may not have access to good internet connection or gadget. Now I can accept that. But okay, of course, we have degrees of homogeneity and heterogeneity. Our degree of heterogeneity is such that we do have a very wide spectrum of progress opportunities, of teacher qualities across the nations. This is also related to 1,500 teacher education institutes that we have. That being said, we have I don't mean to use this as an excuse that, oh, we're big, that's why it's okay to remain not good. No, that's not an excuse. We have to really crack the code of how, it's always the dilemma of quantity and quality. This is the issue in our country. And a lot of reports have mentioned that we're doing well in terms of quantity, participation rates have increased. Now the focus should be on quality. But, when we're working on quality, then quantity is in the background, or is within our context. And so we have to still discuss this and work harder on this, right, Pak Muklas? Okay, sorry, I have to say this in bahasa Jawa. Mumet kepalanya ya kalau mikir Indonesia because of the big size. But that we should take pride that that's our strength also. That's our strength. Okay, a big size is our strength as well as our challenge. Okay, and so at the end, so we know we have the ideas also what effective teachers should be, and that's it. That's the end of my presentation. I will leave it to Ibu Murni. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Anita. I need to learn bahasa Jawa. Seems like very useful, especially when it comes to like all those idioms. I actually want to sum up like the conversations today, but I think you Professor did it very well. Like what are the key points that we can take away? Of course, Indonesia is very different from Singapore in terms of the context, but pretty sure it's one of the country that we can learn from, and as you mentioned, some of the key takeaway that we can further always refer to when we want to improve our programs. Prof. Liu, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think I probably thank you, Prof. Anita, for the sharing. I've learned quite a bit from your diagram. I probably will steal some of the things. Okay, I think I need to answer a couple of questions because you are asking. Okay, it is not vouchers that the teachers have. They have 100 hours of professional development per year. So that is sponsored by the ministry. So that's a question that you asked. So they still have that 100 hours. They can do different things as long as it helps them learn and grow. So professional development is very important. So whether they are going for conferences or whether they attend course in RELC, these are all counted. Even sharing, PLC, professional learning communities, things that they get together and they discuss within the schools, those are counted as well. Okay, so that's one thing that you want me to clarify. Okay, I also want to share that actually, yes, Singapore is very small. We don't have so many teachers, but it also means that we don't have a large population to select our teachers. And I have to say that we only reach our target number of teachers about 4 years ago. So prior to that, we were recruiting a large number of teachers for one institution. You know, 3-4 years ago, NIE graduate 2,500 teachers per year. We were the largest teacher preparation institute in the world. Yes, in the world, because we had to handle so many. So I share this as an encouragement. We don't always end up just focusing on, now we can do a bit more. We can focus more on the 4 years degree program. We extended our PhD to 16 months. But when we didn't have enough teachers in school, in fact, 50 years ago, we didn't have enough schools for children. And for a good 10 years, we were just focusing on building schools. We just want to make sure every student has a chair in the classroom. 50 years ago, Singapore wasn't what it is now. So that was our stage. And then after that, we were really ramping up teachers' number, and we tried to recruit. So even students, we had people who don't have degree. Even now, a lot of our teachers, some of them don't have degree. Okay, they are just high school graduate, or then they train to be teachers. But when we didn't have enough teachers, we were, in a sense, we couldn't just get from the degree students because we didn't have enough. So for even some subjects now, like arts, like sports, we do have diploma holders. They are not degree students, so they don't have PGDE, neither do they have a degree. They end up with a diploma in education. We do have a small number now. So we are moving in a sense, and I think it's a progression that all the countries will go through at different stage. So for us, we went through that. That's why we are now in a slightly better position, and we spend a bit more time on really focusing more on quality than quantity. But when you have no teacher, a relief teacher is better than nobody. So what we did was, when we didn't have a very extensive and intensive teacher preparation, we make sure that we have more support for them, more resources. We used to focus a lot on not even standardized lesson plan, teaching packages, because the teachers didn't have that much time to prepare the things, because it was very challenging in school. So at that time, being an efficient teacher was very important. And then as we go along, when we are able to free up a bit more time for teachers to share, to learn from one another, we are focusing now more on getting them to articulate and come up with innovation. So I think it's different phases. Innovation takes time, okay, to be very honest. And if your teachers have a lot of classes to teach, they don't have a lot of time to innovate. So that's the time where we make sure they have the resources. Okay, what Singapore does is that we want to make sure that we hold the minimum. That means we give them enough support to make sure students all have basic level of competency. But we do not have a top cap. We don't cap the top. We provide support at the bottom. We free the top so that students and teachers who are able to fly to go further are given the chance to go further. But we make sure that the support at the base is there. So that's how we approach the whole in terms of the different systemic change in Singapore. We went through the survival stage, and with survival, we are not talking about all these things about thinking teacher. And one last thing I want to address is that it is true that paying teachers during pre-service is not the most important. In fact, Singapore may be one of the only countries that does that. Okay, but countries that respect teachers and allow teachers to have a meaningful career will be able to attract good people. The good people may not all be your first-class university graduate. So what we then do is that we make sure that we have a strong teacher preparation program to prepare them. And we do content upgrading when they don't have the content. So it is different approaches. Yeah, so these are just, maybe one last comment is, the STP that you mentioned, the STP is bigger than practicum. The STP is for the whole teaching profession. That is a Singapore teaching practice we developed for the teaching profession. So practicum is only one part of our teacher preparation, but we all share the STP as a vision.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Okay, do you have anything else to say, Prof? Or okay. How about Prof. Anita? Anything else, Prof. Muklas? Would you like to say?
May I have one
a
small question, Prof. Liu?
One more question.
You said that there are still student teachers who don't have degree. That's right? So what about that? Do they have to go back to take a degree program or still teaching at school without degree program?
Okay, there are teachers in school, especially primary school, that do not have degree. In fact, we have principals that don't have degree. Primary school principal. Okay, they are already trained teachers. Okay, currently in NIE, we have a very small diploma program where we take in the A-level students, the high school students, and they are only given a diploma in education. So these small groups are the students who are doing mother tongue, Chinese teacher, Malay teacher, Tamil teacher, art, music, and physical education. Because we still don't have enough. Okay, so for these students, if they do diploma in education and they do very well, if they do well enough, they can then cross over to our degree program second year.
Oh, okay.
But not all of them will cross over. So even if they don't cross over, it doesn't matter in a sense that they will then be posted to school. Mainly they're all primary school teachers. Then they will learn through professional development. They may never get a degree, but it is not an issue because it doesn't mean that, no, so once you're in place as a teacher, you will be a teacher and you will grow within the teaching track and you're evaluated according to your teaching ability.
Okay, thank you so much.